So, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to be sharing with you about Electric Quilt 8. And I have been privileged to been able to do some beta testing on it, which meant I got an early version. And I was very excited when I sent a note to EQ and said, okay, I really want to share this ahead of time with my customer base. And they said, oh, sounds good. And I'm like, fabulous, because I really wanted to share this with you guys. And because I know you've got questions, and I know there are people that are still thinking, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? And I thought, by showing you the features, it will allow you to make a more informed decision in the process. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing as I do this sneak peek is I have a PowerPoint that has a few things that are outside of EQ, plus we'll spend most of our time actually within the EQ. So here's what I plan to do over the next hour. I'm going to give, for those of you that don't know me, I wanted to give a little bit of my background. And then I am going to flip over to EQ8 and I'm going to share some of my favorite new features. And I'm just going to start by taking you through some of the major areas within EQ and talk about some of those differences. Then what I plan to do is go ahead and talk about what I'm doing for training for EQ8. And then we're going to be back into EQ8 talking about, again, some of the other areas and new tools within that. And I do have a special offer for all attendees that I'm going to share. And then I'm going to go back to my chat windows and start going through the Q&A. Okay, so for those that don't know me, my company is On Point Quilter. I am sort of a jack of all trades quilter, but have sort of gravitated into being an electric quilt educator. I love this software and I love sharing what I do with it. I started quilting back in 1989. I had a friend that talked me into taking a class at a local craft shop, not even a quilt shop. It was my first time to use a sewing machine, and I started to really enjoy working with fabric manipulation. My first real quilt was done, actually, it didn't take me that long to do, but it started about 6 months later when I walked into a quilt shop and saw a wall sampler that had, maybe 9 rings in it, and it was a double wedding ring quilt. And I fell in love with it, and I knew I wanted to make it. And even though I wasn't an experienced quilter, and this was not a beginner item, the quilt shop owner let me take the class. I sort of laughingly say the instructor left halfway during the class. I'm not sure if it was me and all my questions or what, but I did finish that double wedding ring quilt, and really started a lifelong love of working with quilts and working with all aspects of quilting. Now, I purchased Electric Quilt in 1999, and that was, I think it was just when EQ4 came out. And that was before there were any videos on the internet. In fact, there really wasn't even a lot of Q&A, I think, that you could do on the internet. I read their manual. I still think they have one of the best manuals, in compared to anything that I've looked at for software. And but that was how I learned the program. And about a year later, I began actually teaching at some of the local quilt shops because other people had that same desire to learn electric quilt. And that was at the point that we were still bringing in desktop computers because laptops were not that common at that point in time. That was also the same time I began designing patterns, right? If you're working in electric quilt and you're drawing blocks and you're placing them in quilts, suddenly people want to be able to replicate what you've done in the actual quilts. And so I began doing that. A couple of years ago, I took the big leap, quit my job as a full-time quilter, and then decided that this is what I'm going to do for at least an extended period of time. So my company is On Point Quilter. I started it in August of 2013 by creating a website and creating a blog, and began, someone told me, if you're going to do a blog, you need to be regular, right? You need to, publish all the time. Well, I was doing that, and it used to be I did about 1 week a month that I would post stuff about electric quilt. Well, I was realizing that it was taking me a long time to get my electric quilt stuff, because I was doing all these screenshots, posting them, and then writing all these words. And around February, I thought, you know what, let me try this video thing and see if I can do that. The fact that I didn't have to actually film my face was, helpful. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to film my screen, what I'm doing, and talk about it. And so I produced my first video, and that really, I think, has resonated with my audience. People like that method of learning, and I will say I think I've refined that as over the past few years, and it's been sort of a good vehicle for me. Electric Quilt ended up reaching out and asking if I wanted to do a class with EQ University, and I was very excited to be able to do that. And I've also taught at a couple of their EQ academies. And at that point in time, I also started to explore doing small group online classes. And I know a number of you on this call have probably participated in those. Those have been like groups of, 8-ish types of people that we get around and we share screens, right? I share my screen. The audio, unlike this one, is open and at all times, so that they can ask questions and I can respond. And then a few months ago, it's hard to believe it's only been that long, I introduced what I'm calling my easy peasy concept of learning EQ. And that was when I did the release of Catch the Waves. And I know probably many of you have participated in that. But basically, I sent videos every day, and they were quick and short videos. I held myself to the rule that they needed to be 5 minutes or less, so that if it was more than 5 minutes, then it had to be 2 days rather than 1 day. Actually, I think maybe if I hit 10 minutes, it ended up being 2 days. But the idea was that you would go ahead and watch the video, which would take about 5 minutes, and then you would follow it up by repeating that concept yourself using electric quilt, which would usually take another 5 minutes, unless you had a lot of coloring to do, and then it might take a little bit longer. And the feedback I got from that was phenomenal. And I finally realized, there's a lot of people that just don't have the opportunity to do the shows, or get overwhelmed with some of the classes where you're covering a lot of stuff, right? I mean, when I do a class at a show, or even online, I have a lot of concepts, right, that I'm trying to impart. And, for a lot of people, this is an easier way to learn how to use the tools. I'm going to do a new share, and I'm going to flip over to Electric Quilt. So here's the first thing. This is what EQ is going to look like when you open it now. Very different, right, than what we've had before. One of the things you're going to like is the whole user interface is much more user-friendly. And from that, I'm meaning that if you are not an experienced user of EQ, it's going to be easier to figure out how to do the things that we can do in Electric Quilt. Even for example here, it's saying, what do you want to do? It doesn't immediately go into EQ jargon, right? It says, do you want to design a quilt, draw a block, or work with fabrics, right? Easy questions. And then underneath it, it gives you those sub-questions. Do you want to design a block from scratch or search? Now, I know many of you, because I've looked at how you responded to the questions, have EQ7 or EQ stitch. And so you're probably used to a certain look and feel. And you may be going, what happened to all my tools around the top, right? Because even when you would open up, they would always be there. The main toolbar has switched to the side. And it also now highlights the things that can be used. So because I'm on the home screen, and by the way, that top left button with the house on it, that's home. So anytime you need to get home, you can always click on that. But now I can view my project sketchbook. That's highlighted. The one above it, which is the plus on the sketchbook, is grayed out because I can't use it at this point in time. And so that's where our tools that we've had across the top have moved to. Now, we still have the opportunity, right, for those of us that are used to using those buttons to move between the work tables. You can definitely still do that here. There's a quilt block and an image work table. Or again, you can just go back to your home page and you can say, I want to design a quilt from scratch, right? I want to draw a block. I want to work with fabric. Okay, now I thought what I would like to do now, so that's the home screen, but I want to take you to the libraries. And so I'm going to select search for block patterns. That's the clue for, let's go into the EQ library, block library. So here is our library, takes us into there. I'm going to take a look at this. Now, EQ on some of their pre-release material said that they have 1,500 new blocks and almost 6,800 blocks in total in the library. So I sort of took it as a challenge to myself to say, wow, where are all these blocks at? And most of them look like they're in two categories. One of them is foundation pieced, and they've created a number of new groups of blocks, which I think are really fun. Let's see. In the woods, let's see. I love this, my ABC quilt. Lots of new holiday blocks. So if you're, for those of us that like Christmas quilts, they have a lot of Easter ones, Halloween, right? That's the time of the year. If you get this quickly, you're going to be able to get started on something using those fun new blocks. And then some other holidays. Again, a lot more, but I would say that's one of the categories that had a lot. The other that I noticed was the contemporary applique. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm going to say this is both with the foundation blocks and with the contemporary applique, I think they're new additions. And by the way, all the old ones are still there. At least it certainly looks like that from everything I've been able to go through. All of these new blocks seem to be much more friendly for actually using them in a quilt. Maybe not quite as complex of designs. And so, easier to actually, piece or applique as opposed to, having something that just looks pretty on the screen. So cats, dogs, farm animals, let's see, again, lots of new holiday ones. Now, one of the things I was going to mention is there are 4 buttons, so you can decide how many you want to see at a time, right? If you want them really big so you can look at them up close, you can pick the large. If you want to get as many as possible on the page, I think that's 24, you can select tiny. I've sort of gravitated to the medium as being a nice compromise of what I can see. So lots of things that would work really nicely in kids' prints. And then I'm loving some of these seasonal ones. I think I'm going to have to find a new quilt to make with those. So lots of good things there. Okay, so that's my block library. So let me close that. Let me go back to home. And now I want to search fabric swatches. And that again is the clue to take me to the fabric library, right? Now, opens to the EQ fabric library, opens to your default palette. Now, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to my current sketchbook just so you can see it's same fabrics, right? Here are all of our new fabrics to play with that come in by default. Much brighter, much more modern, have a very nice range of colors, a nice set of neutrals also at the end. I think this is a really usable palette. Obviously, if this one isn't for you, you can change it out and you can replace your palette and select something that you like. Now, our custom library has changed to my favorite libraries. The stuff that I've done in EQ7 has carried over here, which is fabulous. But let me take you to the EQ fabric library. There still is the colors section, but the fabrics are all new fabrics under the colors, which is nice. They also have a section on manufacturing basics, and I think they've gone to all of the main fabric manufacturers, figured out what their sort of lines were that are very standard, right? They don't really change significantly over the years, and they have put those into the fabric collection. So like if we go to Island Batik, we have, 85 on their basics and another 41 fabrics on their blenders. We've got the Moda Bella Solids and the Moda Grunge. I love using grunge. The RJR, Jenny Beyer, all of the Kona Cottons are there. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the cotton and steel basics, and I'm going to put them into my sketchbook. Now, one of the other features that EQ has added is a select all fabrics collection button. So I'm going to select that. It's going to select everything that's out there, and the add to sketchbook is now on the top rather than on the bottom. So I'm going to click on Add to Sketchbook, and these are now in my current sketchbook. So that's at least a quick introduction to some of the changes in the fabric library or in the libraries. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to home, but actually I'm going to go and view my sketchbook because I'm going to now go into the image work table. But so I had something to work with. I went and I added a photo that I took of a piece of fabric on my carpet. Just took this with my iPhone, brought it into my computer, and I'm going to go ahead and edit that to my image work table so you can see the next set of changes. So here's the first thing. Now you'll notice that I'm actually in a work table. I have another whole set of tools on my left. And you'll see that with the EQ tools, there is much more, not only are the icons larger, but to me what is incredibly helpful is the words are listed underneath it. So, no more sitting and guessing what a tool means, right? It actually tells you that, which I think is very, very useful. I'm going to say, even though I'm an experienced EQ user, I love having that. Actually, it probably helps me make sure that I refer to the tools correctly because sometimes I will get sloppy and change my names, and this way I will stay true to that. So for this piece of fabric here, I know that I want to first of all rotate it. So I'm going to click the rotate button. But watch what happens on the left when I do that. I have all of the different rotate tools that immediately pop up. No more having to, find the hidden tools and add them to the toolbar. They are going to automatically be there. So anyway, as I look at this piece of fabric, I'm going to just rotate it 90 degrees. So now I'm going to use my crop button, and I am going to just crop my left and my right. And I'm going to select the green check mark, which is again right under the crop there, to accept my crop. Now that I have done that, I'm going to be able to show you another. Now I've gone and I've measured this fabric, right? Because it's from my collection. It was on my floor. I know it's 19¼ inches across. And so I can now select scale fabric. And this is a new feature that EQ8 has added. With that, there's a box that says, what's your measured fabric distance? So I know that's 19¼ I can put that in, and I can click on apply scale, and it immediately resizes my fabric. Now let me go back to fit to work table, right? I've done that. And now I want to show you another feature under rotate. That's a new one. I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in first, but I'm going to select the rotate button, and they have a new feature called straighten. And so I can go ahead and select this, and I am going to drag a line from one point to another point on my fabric. And the idea is I am figuring out what my straight of grain is, right? I could have used my salvage, but because I have a stripe here, and I pulled a stripe in because it was just easier to demonstrate this. I have now told EQ, this is my minutia, change that's required for this fabric to be straight. So once I've done that, I select Apply Straighten, and I don't know if you can see, but along my left, I have a little bit of that blue background. That is the rotation that EQ needed to do to get that piece of fabric straight. So, that might have been less than a percentage, but EQ now is able to do that level of precision to allow us to get our fabrics perfectly straight, which is great for tiling of the fabric. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back to full screen, do my crop. Now that I've done this, I can select my right and my left point. I'm looking for a repeat at this point. I decided I have a little bit of a fold in the fabric, so I want to get rid of that. And then on the top and the bottom, I want to catch that repeat. So I'm going to use that blue bar as my marking point. So I found it on the top, found it on the bottom. This is actually 2 repeats rather than 1, but that's okay. Now I can apply my crop, which is that green arrow. And then now front and center is the button that says Add to Fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and it's going to now put that as fabric in my sketchbook. So if I view my sketchbook, go to the Fabrics tab, go to the very end, there's my new fabric. Okay, so I think that's enough in terms of demos of the image tab. What I want to do now is go back home, and I am going to actually edit a block, but let me go to my block work table, and I want to do a new block, and I know I want it to be a pieced block, right? So now it's taking me through the steps at the top. We start with identifying the block, drawing it, coloring it, and printing it. Now, if I do a new block, it's not immediately asking me, do I want an easy draw? Because I may not know what it is, but I do know I want a pieced one rather than an applique, so I can check that. Now it's asking me, do I want easy draw, poly draw, or open library? Now there also are tips, so if I don't know the difference, I can click on the tips and it will describe that. I'm going to go ahead and close the tips because I'm not going to have time to read them, obviously, during my demo here. But I am going to go ahead and go to my library. And I'm going to go back, since I know I want a pieced one, to my foundation piecing. I'm going to go to my balloons, and I think this is a new one. It's a hot air balloon. And I'm going to now be able to select Edit to Block Work Table. So I no longer have to bring this into the sketchbook, go to the sketchbook, find it, and then edit it. I can go directly from here to my block work table. So it comes in my Easy Draw block, right? It says that's what I've got here. And now when I do that, let me just flip over it. Notice it flipped over to the drawing tools, right? So it's already setting me up to draw, even flipped over to the line tool. I'm going to go ahead, though. I just want to show you the color tool because I'm going to bring you back here in a minute. But you can see the coloration. And we all remember in the earlier versions of EQ what would happen if we would change lines in Easy Draw, right? We would make changes and suddenly the whole coloration would sort of blow up on you and you'd have to pretty much start over with your coloring. Well, I just love what's happening with this, but I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go back to the Draw tab, right? I'm going to use my pick tool first of all, and I'm going to select my lines here. By the way, if I click on that advanced symmetry, it's going to tell me here are all the things I can do with what I selected. And I'm going to just go ahead and select rotate them 45 degrees. I was thinking I might just keep them, but I'm sort of, it doesn't quite fit. So what I'm going to do is go up to the top here. My snap setting toolbar is very similar to what we're used to using, right? So that really hasn't changed. But I'm going to select convert the selected segments to guides, because then I can just redraw these. So I'm going to now pick up my line tool, again, very visible on the left, and I'm just going to trace these lines. And they don't have to be perfectly straight because I'm going to be foundation piecing this, right? So once I've done that, I'm going to go back to my color tab. And do you see that EQ now remembers all of the coloration other than the places that I made changes to? So all of my background is colored correctly. My basket is colored correctly. The only thing I need to color are, the new things that I added. So I personally think this is like my absolutely favorite thing. Well, yeah, I think it is, that EQ has added to the program, because this is the one feature that is going to, I think, save me a ton of time. Let me just go ahead and put a background in this as well. I'm going to pick up one of the blues for the sky, use my spray can, do that, right? And now I'm going to go ahead and add that to my sketchbook. Now, because I opened EQ and didn't actually open a project, it came in as untitled, and you can see that in the upper left corner. When I go to add to sketchbook, this is when EQ does their saves or their resaves. And because I don't have a name, it's asking me to give it a name at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and name it. And I'm going to click on Save. Now, one of the things you may have noticed is there is no longer a Save button up here, because really the Add to Sketchbook is what's going to allow you to do the saving going forward. So just always remember, add your block, add your quilt, add whatever you're doing to your sketchbook, and EQ will do a save at that point in time. And if you don't have a project out there to save to, it will remind you to do that. Okay, so I've done one version of this block. I'm going to go ahead and make some additional changes. So I'm going to go back to the Draw tab, use my pick tool. I'm now going to select, forgot to have my shift button on, select the items. Now I'm just going to delete. Now, there's no more delete button on the left, but it is included as a pick tool option. So I can select that. My other choice, right, so I think we were doing cut before, now we do delete. We can also still use the delete key on our keyboard for this. Okay, so let me clear my guides and let me take my line tool, and I am just going to draw a couple more lines out there and go back to my color tab. Oh, I didn't draw a line, so let me go ahead and get that actually touching that, that line there. Okay, back to my color tab. Let me go ahead and recolor that. Oh, one thing I'm still getting used to is that it always navigates to the last used tool in the fabrics. And I usually always end with the paintbrush. So I still have a little bit of my own retraining, brain retraining to do here, which I will get that done. So once I've done this, I'm going to go ahead and add that to the sketchbook. So anyway, that will give you some idea of some of the changes in Easy Draw, and also starting to get you used to the new tools on the left. So now I want to talk about PolyDraw. So I'm going to select a new block, still a pieced block, and now I'm going to select the PolyDraw option. Now, all those tools that were on the top, you know, or that were incorporated in with the snap points, everything is now on the left other than our snap point settings, right? And the drawing tools, again, have much more description. So the first thing is you can see that since we're in PolyDraw, we can select a grid. And we can change this out, right, when we need this. But it also gives you pictures of what those grids are going to look like. So you don't even have to click on them to see that. So let me select that 8-pointed star grid. And now, you know, there are no longer any little red boxes, little red dots that we have to click on, or gray arrows that we have to click on to get our tools. Everything is front and center. So I'm going to select the Polyline tool. And some of you, I know, had some issues in the past with EQ having sort of what we call the sticky blue line issue, that you would move into this workspace. For those that had that issue will happen no more, because they've changed the way the Polyline and the PolyArc tool work. Now, in order for it to start, we double click on our first point. So remember, we always double clicked on our last point, which we still do. We're going to double click on the first point. Now we get this nice big blue line to tell us what we're exactly drawing. We know we've started. It's single clicks for each of the intermediate points, and it's a double click to finish. So very easy to use. And again, if I wanted to do another one, I would double click, single, single. Remember, this isn't the end because we don't share lines in PolyDraw. Single click, double click on our first point to finish. You can also see that it selected this block, and it's telling me down here exactly what I could even do with that. I can clone it. I can flip it left to right. I can move it in position. All of that, I think, much easier to sort of see the tools, see the possibilities in terms of what we can do. So I am loving some of the changes that they did to PolyDraw here. Okay, I want to do one more new block, and for this one, I'm going to select Applique and Motif because, and I'm not going to save this, I want to show you the new tools here. So first of all, the snap tools, no matter what tool I select, those snaps are going to be visible at the top. I am super excited about that. used to frustrate me because sometimes I would be sitting and using a tool and I'm like, okay, where's the snaps? Oh, I have to do the pick. Oh, I need to, have something selected or not selected. These are front and center the whole time, easy to check and make sure you've got the correct snap settings, or if you need to flip one on for just one patch to snap to grid, you can go ahead, and do that. The other thing that is really nice, again, is under, these tools, everything is described. And so no more guessing at what these icons mean. So I'm going to go ahead and select shapes. And the reason I'm going to do that is I don't have time in this presentation to go through it, but they have 3 new fun tools. And I'm going to save this for a blog post, but they have a Star Maker, Posy Maker, and a Stencil Maker. And you are going to have just a blast playing with those. But what I want to do is go ahead and select this acute diamond. And, because again, all these shapes, no longer any flyouts for them. I'm just going to draw one. And I'm doing that because I want to show you the changes in Wreath Maker. So I'm going to select my Wreath Maker. And what immediately happens is we have a preview mode so we can see what's going on here. Now I can change the number of clusters. So I've brought that up to 8. As I make changes, I can see exactly what's going to happen. So I don't have to sort of guess and then go back, do an undo, keep making changes. I can go ahead and adjust directly on this screen. Oh, I need to do a different rotation here. Let me go ahead and do something different. Let me select it with my pick tool. I always got to remember how to rotate, which way I want this one rotated. Okay, back to Wreath Maker. Okay, because I wanted these to overlap. So I had to, the rotation that it does is always the one that is the top item here. But I'm going to bring my cluster spacing down. Oh, I want to make this bigger, so I'm going to resize it, and then I'm going to do this, right? So I can just keep playing with it till I get it the right size, and to get that so that they are completely interlocked. And then I can select OK. And so I love that preview feature because it makes it much more friendly to work with. Now I can go ahead and do my shapes, select an octagon, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a center. And I've done my first applique block. So I can go to my color tab, right? I've got my paintbrush here. Let's see, put that, and I think I'll just use my spray can, right? Got something done. Go ahead and add that to my sketchbook. Now there's one more thing in New Block I want to cover, and that is Serendipity. The features of Serendipity are very much the same as what we're used to in EQ7, but under the frame block, they have added a bunch of new frames. And most of those frames fall, actually, I think they all fall into sort of those on-point settings, which I think is a great opportunity because, sometimes these are would all make like fabulous settings for medallion quilts. And I think, some very, very nice on-point settings. So once you have something you like, you go ahead, just like we did in the past, and add it to the sketchbook. Now, one of the other things I'm going to mention, because you're going to say, well, Carrie, you said you just opened it, but there are all these blocks here. EQ actually is loading some of the most commonly used blocks in your sketchbook automatically. Now, if you don't like that feature, you can definitely change that. But I think particularly for when you're just getting started, it's very nice having that option to have all of those blocks there to work with and to set into quilts. I am going to go back to my PowerPoint here, and What I am going to do for starting my EQ8 training is I am creating a new program that I'm calling Techno Quilters. And it really is a membership program, but you can certainly purchase individual months if you don't want to actually sign up, for the actual membership. So here's how it's going to work. Each month, I am going to send you 13 separate video lessons on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They're going to be very similar to Catch the Waves and the Easy Peasy Easy Draw in that they're going to be short, right? They're going to be like 5 minutes, and they're going to cover a key concept that you can replicate in EQ. Each month, we're going to actually focus on a major area or topic within EQ, and so it's going to allow you to become, well-versed in that particular area. Those that enroll in the Techno Quilter program will also get a private invitation to 2 online help sessions per month. And these are sessions where you can basically come and ask me any question you want. It could be something in terms of the Techno Quilter, what you've been learning this month, or it could just be a problem that you're working with and have problems with. The beauty of the format that I'm going to use for this is you'll not only be able to see my screen, but you will be able to share your own screen. And so I can look at it, I can, help and advise on that. So I'm sort of excited to be able to introduce that in this program as well. And then I'm going to set up a private Facebook group for those that are in this program. And will also be another chance to ask questions and share photos. Okay, so people probably want to know, well, what topics are you planning? Well, I've got my agenda worked out for the first 6 months, and we'll just start with, working with fabric collections and then get into Easy Draw. And again, all of this is going to be in EQ8. We're going to then talk about medallions. We're going to actually break that into 2 parts because there's so much to potentially cover there. And then we're going to go through Bargello quilts, which, there's some, actually, even if you're not into Bargello, there's some tricks that you're going to learn in Bargello that you're going to love, that you're going to take over into some of the other things. And then I'm going to do a compass quilt, which will get us into that pieced patch draw in more detail. So I have some other ideas. I'm also going to talk to people that join the class and make sure that we have what meets them. I know there'll end up being some applique when we get into the second half of the year. So here are the quilts that you will be designing in the first 6 months of Techno Quilters. I've actually made these quilts, and I've actually produced patterns, and I'm going to say they're pattern designer quality, not just EQ cutting charts and layouts and that. But I will be providing those also to the people that are in Techno Quilters. Price. I know many of you are wondering the price. The price for this is going to be $30 a month. The first month is payable on sign up. It's actually going to start on January, beginning of January. Month 2 will be billed on January 20th, and that will be for the February class. There will be an option after the first sign up to do auto payments for some of the future months. Now, you can cancel at any time. So if you do 1 month and you just go, this is way too much, I just don't, I'm overwhelmed, or this is not my favorite method of learning, you can cancel, and basically your cancellation will be effective on the first of the subsequent month. Now, I do have a bonus to those that enroll by October 31st, and I'm going to share that with you. Actually, let me go ahead and share that now. So if you enroll in my Techno Quilter program, and you do that by the end of October, you will receive a video series called Shoot for the Stars with EQ8, absolutely free. Now, what's this Shoot for the Stars? It's actually very similar in concept to Catch the Waves. It's going to take you through designing some blocks, designing a quilt in EQ8. But it's going to go beyond that, because I'm going to use that as a way to introduce and start to train on some of these new features in EQ8. So an email is going to be sent on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of each week, and it's going to have a short, i.e. 5-minute video to assist in designing this quilt. And then at the end, you will have designed, I'm going to say, a mystery quilt and been introduced to many of the new features in this release. Now, the standalone purchase price of this program is going to be $35. I am going to have a sale price, and I currently have one listed for $25. But if you are an early purchaser of Techno Quilters, i.e. you purchase it by October 31st, you get this $25, $35 program absolutely free. So I'm going to say, even if you're on the fence, purchase the first month, right, of Techno Quilters, or sign up for the program, get the free one, do month one, and if you don't like it, go ahead and cancel, right, if that's not right for you, because I think it certainly is a good value. Okay, back to EQ. Okay, so what I want to do now is go ahead and work on a quilt. So I'm going to go back to my Home tab, and I'm going to say I want to design a quilt from scratch. Now, my layout of the way I can do this, and again, I'm going to do it in this order: new quilt, layout, borders, design, print, and export. You don't have to do it in order, other than the fact you always have to select your quilt type first. After that, you can flip around. But I'm going to do a new quilt, and now there is this ribbon bar across the top with pictures of all of your options for designing your quilts. So you've got a feel for what it's going to look like before you click on it. So I'm going to select horizontal, right? This is a horizontal quilt that's here. Now, my next step is I'm going to go into the Layout tab, and when I am in the Layout tab, this looks pretty familiar, right? I just need to pick my blocks horizontal and vertical, pick the size, pick sashing, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on my Border tab. And when I do that, there is another ribbon bar with examples of all of the borders. Now, EQ does default to the long horizontal like it did in the past. And I am going to go ahead and I'm just going to put a couple of borders on this quilt. First one, I'm going to do left and right at 0, top and bottom at 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another one and just bring that up to 2, right? So I've got some borders. Now I'm going to design my quilt. Notice when I click on design, the block tools open up, which that's usually right. The first thing we're going to want to do is set blocks. Well, EQ naturally opens up to that, and it opens up to the block library. So now I can scroll, and I'm just going to find those hot air balloons, right? And I'm going to put them in this quilt. Pretty simple, right? Just click set blocks, click that, click my workspace. Now I'm going to go ahead and at the top, notice that I have block tools. Any set of tools I can use is highlighted. So I've clicked on blocks. Now I'm going to click on my fabric tools. So that's a little bit similar to how we've done work on blocks, right? We have sort of the block pieces separated from the fabric pieces. So now I'm on the fabric toolbar, right? And I've got all my fabric tools completely labeled. I'm going to use my eyedropper, find this, use my spray can, color this, color those 2 borders. Oh, let's see, let's go ahead and quickly recolor this middle one. I probably should have just played with random recolor, right? Oh, let's do that. Okay, so anyway, I've now colored this other than the border, but I wanted to save the border because one of the other features in the color tool is the fabric preview is now detachable. And let me explain why this is such a good thing. remember that photo I took? And when you look at that fabric in the fabric sketchbook, it's sometimes hard to figure out because it's a larger scale print and you can't see the whole print in this little work table. So if I detach my fabric preview, it allows me to create a much bigger piece of that fabric for looking at and for working with. So now that I have a larger fabric preview, I know for sure this, what the fabric that I'm selecting is going to look like. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on each of my borders, right? Fabric set. Now I can keep this front and center if I've got a lot of large scale fabrics, or I can just close it and it returns it back to the toolbar. Now I'm in my fabric tools. I have the rotate fabric button. No longer a hidden tool, always visible when we're in our fabric. I can rotate my fabric, and I have that on my sketchbook. Now what I want to do is go ahead and first of all, notice you can see here are all of my things that I can do on layer 1, right? I'm on layer 1. By the way, I can hide layers, but down here also. But I'm going to go into layer 2. And now you can see that I have some different tools that are highlighted. One of the tools is this text tool. So let's say I want to add text to my quilt. So I'm going to select it. Immediately there's a set text button, and I've got it's clicked on already. I can select my typeface, which is any font on my computer. And now I'm looking and I'm going, oh, I don't want to use this stripe for my fabric, right? But EQ is saying, if I want to change this, choose the fabric tools at the top. Oh, okay, I'm going to the fabric tools. And now I'm going to select my paintbrush, so I've got my options. I'm going to scroll over, find a fabric I like, go back to my text tools, and it's changed that color. So I'm going to go ahead and use my shift. Again, if I didn't know how to do this, I would click on the shift key, right? And it would give me instructions. And so I'm going to do my shift. I'm going to type up, up, and away. I'm going to create a second block down here and say with EQ8. Now I'm going to select my adjust tool because I just want to make a few changes, right? I've got this. I want to center this. Oh, by the way, I want to center it horizontally. Tool front and center on the left, center horizontally. I'm going to select the with EQ8, move that in place, center that horizontally. Super, super simple, right, to do. And so then I'm going to go ahead and add this to my project sketchbook. Now I want to take you over to the printing tools. So I'm going to select print and export. Now I've got, I don't have any blocks selected at this point. The only thing that's highlighted here are quilt, yardage, print setup. Let me show you yardage because one of the new features in EQ8 is an option to select fat quarters only. So for those of us, and I love to buy fat quarters, and it is super nice to now know exactly how many I'm going to need in my quilt. So let me do a preview on that, and let me just zoom in so you can see what I've done here. First of all, if the pieces are too large to fit in a fat quarter, so remember that blue, it was actually one of the border pieces, and that border is larger than 20 inches. So EQ is saying, you know what, you really can't use fat quarters for this. You need yardage, so it tells me that. But if I can use fat quarters, if all of the pieces are small enough that they can use fat quarters, it will tell me exactly how many fat quarters I need. The other thing that's nice is if we use the fabric in the fabric libraries, EQ is not only telling me the fabric collection, but it's also telling me the SKU number. So when we go into our local quilt shops, we're going to be able to exactly match what we've designed in Electric Quilt. Okay, so that's on the print quilt. So now let me go back to layer 1 and let me select one of my hot air balloons. Notice that now that I've selected a block, by the way, did you see when I selected the block? It's telling me the width and the height of the block. These are finished sizes. This is going to be super, super nice when it comes to borders. No longer do we have to select the block and then select block or select rotary cutting to find measurements. Again, finished sizes, so you need to add your 1/2 inch seam allowance, but this is providing you with the actual size of each of the blocks in the quilt. So anyway, I'm going to select my hot air balloon and I'm going to select foundation. So does all the sectioning right, just like it did in EQ7. Let me go ahead and do a preview, however. So do you see EQ now has an option where it literally will apply the coloration of the block when we do this. So that is going to be super, super helpful when working on foundations. Now, there's a couple of things I'm not liking. One is it's cutting off, part of my balloon. It's moving it on 2 pages that I'm going to have to tape together. And I really would like to put a name on this block. So let me go ahead and close this, and we're going to cover both of those. First of all, in the page setup, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to select landscape. Right, and that's going to basically allow everything to be rotated. I can't rotate individual pieces. That's still is not an option in EQ8, but I can rotate my my page, right, that I'm working on. Now, under my options, I have the option to edit the name. So I no longer have to go to my sketchbook and do it there and then bring it back into, EQ. I can select edit name, type the name, and just click on apply. So now I'm going to go ahead and do another preview. It put it on my landscape, all nicely colored. There's no move button, but if I just click on this piece, I can move it down to another page, and I've got it split between the pages. So I think that's I really like some of the changes that they've done here. Okay, so we've done that. Here's what else I wanted to cover with printing. I want to go to layer 2 and I'm going to find my text, right? My up, and away. Now, one of the things that is not grayed out is templates. So I'm going to select that and I am going to go ahead and do a preview, but I want you to notice there is an option now to actually do a mirror block. So if we want to print this out on on paper or freezer paper or use our fusibles, we can do that by just selecting that mirror block option. Very, very nice feature. So I'm going to do a preview on that. Oh, it's on 2 pages. I can click and I can move, right, these items just by doing that. Oh, I need to fit this one in and it's not going to, well, it does fit, but let's pretend it doesn't. Because one of the other options is rotate, and that it will rotate that in 30-degree increments. And so you can get these things completely repositioned so that you can make the best use of your fusible webbing when you print this out. Okay, so I think that is very nice. Okay. Literally, I am at the top of the hour. So I told you the presentation would take an hour. It did. But I'm going to open it up for Q&A now, and I'm going to go ahead and move into my chat window. Hopefully this was helpful. and that this was an opportunity to really check out the features. And I'm hoping you're going to like this as much as I do. I am really enjoying playing with this, and I think it's going to be great. And I, look forward to the potential of seeing a number of you in my future classes, because I love enjoying sharing my love of EQ with you as well. Thank you very much.